A girl told the officer, "My wolf can find your son." What happened next shocks everyone. Its cobblestone streets glimmered under the soft glow of lanterns, and the market square buzzed with the hum of merchants and townsfolk. But that peace was shattered one cold morning, when word spread like wildfire. The young Prince Alaric had vanished. Captain Roderick, the kingdom's chief officer, received the news with a sharp sense of dread. He had been responsible for the prince's safety for years, ever since Alaric could barely walk. Now, the boy was missing and no trace was left behind. No footprints, no note, nothing. The royal guards had searched the castle and nearby villages. They had even scoured the riverbanks, but the boy had disappeared as if swallowed by the earth itself. Roderick paced the royal hall, his boots echoing against the marble floor. The king, a stern man with silvered hair, and the queen, whose eyes had always been warm but now flickered with fear, stood silently before him. "You must find him," the king said, his voice low and steady, carrying the weight of command. "The boy's life may be in grave danger. If he is not returned, Eldoria could fall into chaos." Roderick bowed, though his mind was already racing with possibilities. "I will leave no stone unturned, Your Majesty. I swear it." The queen stepped forward, her hand trembling slightly as she clutched a pendant of the prince. "Roderick, please. I know you will do everything. Just hurry." Her voice broke, but her eyes held a mixture of hope and despair that only made Roderick's chest tighten. He left the castle at once, summoning his most trusted men. Horses were saddled, maps spread across the table, and orders shouted across the yard. Every path leading into the Darkwood forest, the forest that bordered the kingdom, was scouted, but none returned with news. Roderick had always known the forest had a dangerous reputation. Old tales spoke of spirits that lured travelers into endless mazes, of trees that moved to confuse those who entered, and of shadows that whispered secrets no human ear should hear. Yet the prince's footprints led straight into it, vanishing there as if he had been swallowed by the trees themselves. By dusk, Roderick sat on a fallen log at the forest's edge, the wind biting at his cheeks. The trees loomed like silent giants, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. He gripped the hilt of his sword and muttered under his breath, "This place, it does not forgive the careless." Then, as if answering his thoughts, a soft voice called from the forest shadows. "Your son is not lost." Roderick spun toward the sound, hand on his sword, but he saw only a figure emerging from the mist. She was a young woman, perhaps no older than the prince himself, yet her presence was commanding. Her hair was the color of raven wings, and her eyes glimmered like molten silver. At her side, a massive wolf padded silently, its fur glinting like moonlight on ice. The animal's gaze met Roderick's, and he felt a shiver run down his spine. "I am Lyra," the girl said, her voice calm, almost musical. "And this is Kale, my wolf. He can find your son." Roderick's brow furrowed. "A wolf, and you? Do you expect me to believe a child and a wolf will lead me to the prince?" Lyra's silver eyes did not waver. "I am not just a child. The forest listens to me, the trees tell me secrets, the wind carries whispers, and Kale, he sees what the human eye cannot. If you wish to find your son, you will follow us." Roderick hesitated. Every instinct told him this girl was dangerous, perhaps even part of the forest's dark magic. But every rational thought was drowned in the urgency of finding the prince. He nodded slowly. "Very well, lead the way, but know this, I do not forgive betrayal." Lyra inclined her head and Kale padded forward, silent as the mist that clung to the forest floor. Roderick followed, his men behind him, hearts pounding, eyes darting at every shifting shadow. The forest seemed to breathe around them, the trees groaning softly as if warning the intruders to turn back. Hours passed, and the deeper they ventured, the stranger the forest became. Roots twisted into shapes that resembled faces, glowing fungi cast an eerie light on the path, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something sweeter, something not entirely human. Roderick gripped his sword tighter, his eyes never leaving Lyra or her wolf. "You must trust Kale," Lyra said quietly as though reading his thoughts. "The forest can mislead the human eye. Only he can see the true path." Roderick swallowed, struggling against disbelief. Yet every step he took beside the wolf, he felt the path straighten beneath them. No illusions twisted their way, no roots tripped their feet. It was as if the forest itself parted for Kale but remained a trap for anyone else. As night fell, the forest became a shadow of movement. Strange sounds echoed around them, the snap of twigs, rustling leaves, distant growls that were not Kale's. The men whispered nervously, some reaching for their torches, but Lyra held up a hand. "Do not light them. The light confuses the forest." Roderick's jaw tightened. He did not like being told what to do, but he had no choice. Kale led them through a narrow ravine where moonlight barely touched the ground. Suddenly, the wolf stopped, ears pricked, and growled low in its throat. "Something is ahead," Lyra whispered. "Be ready." Roderick's heart pounded as he crept forward. The shadows shifted, forming shapes that looked almost human, then dissolved into mist. And then a sound, sharp, clear, almost a child's voice, pierced the night. "Help me!" Roderick froze. It was faint but unmistakable. He looked at Lyra, whose eyes were wide, reflecting moonlight. "The prince," she said softly, "he is close. The forest is testing him." "Testing him?" Roderick asked, tension rising in his chest. "The forest does not let the innocent walk freely when darkness approaches," Lyra replied. "It feeds on fear, and it will only give him to those who are brave enough to face their own shadows." The men around him muttered nervously, but Roderick felt a strange calm settle over him. He looked at Lyra, the girl who spoke to wolves, who seemed to command the forest, and felt a mix of fear and awe. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, and yet there was truth in her words. Somehow the boy was alive, and their path, though dangerous, was real. Kale padded forward, nose to the ground, ears twitching. Roderick followed, careful not to lose sight of the wolf or the girl. The sound of the prince's voice grew louder, echoing through the twisted trees, until they reached a small clearing bathed in silvery moonlight. There, lying at the center, was Prince Alaric, or at least the illusion of him. The boy appeared pale, frightened, and trapped in a shimmering cage of light that shimmered and twisted like smoke. Roderick took a step forward, but the ground beneath him shifted, roots twisting toward him like hands. "Stay back," Lyra shouted, stepping forward, her voice echoing strangely through the clearing. Kale growled, fur bristling, eyes glowing silver. With a swift movement, Lyra whispered words that sounded like wind through the trees, and the roots recoiled, opening a path. Roderick's mind raced. Magic, real magic. He had always dismissed the old tales as superstition, but here it was, undeniable, and it was saving the prince. Lyra turned to him, her expression grave. "The forest wants something from me. If I falter, it will keep him, and perhaps more. You must trust me completely." Roderick swallowed hard, his pride clashing with the fear in his heart. I trust you," he said finally, his voice firmer than he felt. Lyra gave a small nod, then stepped forward toward the glowing cage. Kale padded beside her, growling low. The forest seemed to hold its breath, watching. And as Lyra reached out, a shadow detached itself from the trees, a dark, twisting shape, eyes gleaming with hunger. It was large, far larger than Kale, and its voice, though silent, seemed to pierce Roderick's mind. "You should not have come here." Roderick gripped his sword, ready to strike, but Lyra placed a hand on his arm. "Wait. Do not fight it, not yet. It is tied to me and to the prince. Only together can we end this." The shadow advanced, and Kale growled, baring teeth that glittered like steel. Lyra's silver eyes flashed, and she whispered to the forest. The trees groaned, wind swirled, and the clearing became a storm of light and shadow. Roderick felt a strange warmth as he realized something impossible. The forest, the wolf, and the girl, they were all working as one, a force beyond understanding, yet tethered to human courage and will. And then just as the shadow lunged, the prince's cry rang out again, louder, closer, desperate. Roderick's heart leapt. He knew the moment they saved him was near. But at the same time, a chill ran down his spine, for the forest had more to show, and Lyra's secret was deeper than he could ever imagine. The clearing fell silent, the shadows waiting, the wolf tense and Lyra standing between them, eyes fixed on something unseen. And in that silence, Roderick realized the journey had only just begun. The clearing was thick with silence, broken only by the soft growl of Kale, Lyra's wolf, and the whisper of the wind through twisted trees. The shadow that had appeared in the center of the clearing did not move like a normal animal. It flowed, twisting and stretching as if alive with thought. Its eyes glimmered red like embers, and a cold, unnatural wind surrounded it, carrying whispers that pressed against Roderick's mind. "Stay behind me," Lyra whispered, her voice calm but tense. Her hand rested on Kale's thick fur. "Do not interfere until I speak the words. The forest will test all who enter." Roderick nodded, gripping his sword tightly. He could feel the fear in the air, but also a strange fascination. The forest was alive in ways he had never imagined. Every leaf, every shadow seemed to pulse with intent. He realized this was no ordinary rescue mission. This was a test of courage, trust, and perhaps of the bond between human and magic. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the damp, earthy air. When she opened them, her silver gaze met Roderick's. "The shadow is part of me. Long ago I was cursed to be bound to the forest. Kale and we are connected to its heart. To free the prince I must face what the shadow represents." Roderick's chest tightened. "A curse?" he asked quietly. He had never seen a person speak so openly of magic, and yet here it was right before his eyes. Lyra nodded, stepping closer to the glowing cage where the prince was trapped. "Yes, a curse born from fear and anger. I lost my family to the forest's wrath long ago. I was left alone and the forest claimed me. Kale came to me then, and together we became its guardians." The shadow twisted closer, moving with a grace that was terrifying and hypnotic. Its voice echoed inside Roderick's mind, not in words but in emotions. "You cannot pass. You are not worthy. Turn back or be lost forever." Roderick's hands tightened on his sword, but he stood firm. "I will not leave a child to this forest," he thought fiercely. His sense of duty, forged over years of service, collided with the fear gnawing at his heart. Lyra stepped forward, extending a hand toward the shadow. "I am not afraid of you," she said. Her voice rang like a bell, steady and clear. Kale growled low, moving to circle the shadow, his silver eyes reflecting moonlight. The shadow seemed to hesitate, as if surprised by Lyra's confidence. "You cannot fight me with words," it hissed in the language of the forest. The trees themselves seemed to sway, groaning as if in agreement. "I do not fight you," Lyra replied. "I am part of you but not controlled by fear. I will face what I must to save him." The shadow lunged, and Kale sprang forward with a roar that shook the branches above. Its claws raked through the air, but Lyra raised her hands, murmuring words that were older than any living being in Eldoria. The shadow froze, flickering like smoke caught in a sudden wind. Roderick watched in awe as Lyra's silver eyes glowed, and a soft light began to radiate from her palms. The shadow shrieked, twisting violently, and then began to shrink, folding in on itself like a ribbon of darkness being pulled into a single point. Kale circled the shadow, keeping it contained, while Lyra whispered words that seemed to come from both fear and determination. Slowly, the shadow dissolved, leaving behind only a faint mist that clung to the forest floor. Roderick exhaled, lowering his sword. "Is it over?" he asked. His voice was thick with disbelief and relief. "For now," Lyra said, her body trembling slightly. She glanced at the cage where Prince Alaric remained, still caught in the shimmering light. "The forest tests both the brave and the guilty. The prince is near freedom, but the final challenge is still ahead. The forest does not release what it holds without asking for something in return. Roderick stepped closer. "What does it want?" he asked, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Lyra hesitated. Her eyes flicked to the dark canopy above where shadows still moved like watching eyes. "It wants trust, faith, courage, and a bond between those who enter. The forest will not let a soul pass if it senses doubt or fear." Roderick felt a strange warmth in his chest. The forest, terrifying as it was, seemed almost alive with purpose. It was not evil, it was testing them, shaping them, demanding more than just brute strength. Kale padded to the cage and let out a low growl. He pressed his massive head against it, sniffing the air. The shimmering light around the prince flickered and then began to dim. Slowly, the cage unraveled, the magic dissolving like morning mist in sunlight. Roderick's eyes widened as he saw Prince Alaric step forward, pale but unharmed. "Your Highness!" he exclaimed, relief flooding him. The prince looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. I couldn't move, it was all shadows." Lyra knelt beside the boy, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You are safe now," she said softly. "The forest has let you go, but you must never fear it. It only tests those who enter its heart." Alaric nodded, tears forming in his eyes. I thought I would never leave." Roderick's mind was a whirlwind of awe and questions. He looked at Lyra, realizing for the first time how extraordinary she was. She was not merely a girl who lived on the edge of the forest. She was a guardian, bound to forces beyond comprehension, yet human in every gesture and word. As they began to make their way back toward the forest edge, Lyra glanced at Roderick. Her expression was thoughtful, almost sad. "There is something I must tell you," she said quietly. "Kale and we are not free of the forest's influence. I was cursed long ago, and only by facing these shadows could I prove my strength. But the forest still watches me. It still tests me." Roderick nodded slowly, understanding more than he could say. "I trust you, Lyra. I do not know your past or your magic, but I trust you." A small, almost imperceptible smile crossed Lyra's lips. "Then perhaps the forest will also trust us." The journey back was quiet, filled with the soft sounds of Kale's paws and the rustle of leaves. Roderick noticed how the forest seemed less threatening now, almost respectful, as if acknowledging the courage and trust they had shown. Yet he also sensed that deeper secrets remained, hidden in the shadows of trees that had witnessed centuries of magic and misfortune. When they finally reached the edge of the forest, the first light of dawn was breaking, casting golden hues over the kingdom's distant rooftops. The prince ran ahead, eager to be reunited with his parents. The castle gates opened as guards rushed to receive him, their faces alight with relief and wonder. Roderick turned to Lyra, but she was already stepping back into the mist of the forest. "Lyra, wait," he called, but she only shook her head. "I must remain here for now," she said softly. "The forest still needs me, but you will see me again, Roderick, I promise." Kale let out a low, mournful howl and Lyra patted his head. Together they disappeared into the mist, leaving Roderick standing at the edge of the forest, heart pounding with awe, fear, and something he did not yet understand, a growing connection to the girl who had saved the prince. As Roderick rode back to the castle with the prince, he could not shake the feeling that the forest was not done with him, or with Lyra. The wind whispered secrets he could not quite understand, carrying faint echoes of silver eyes and the low growl of a wolf. Later, in the quiet of the castle hall, the king and queen embraced their son, tears streaming down their faces. Roderick watched, feeling a sense of duty fulfilled, yet restless. Lyra's words and actions haunted him. Only the brave and trusting can walk the forest's heart. He could not deny it. He had felt fear, doubt, and awe all at once, and he had seen something extraordinary, something that would not let him forget the girl and her wolf. That night, as the castle slept, Roderick stood at the window, staring toward the forest. Mist curled around the trees like fingers, and he swore he saw silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. Kale's growl echoed faintly on the wind, and Lyra's voice whispered in his mind, "This is only the beginning." Roderick's fingers tightened on the windowsill. He did not yet know what lay ahead, what secrets the forest still held, or what trials awaited Lyra and him. But one thing was certain: the bond formed in the heart of the Darkwood forest would not be broken. And somewhere deep in the shadows, the forest waited, alive, patient, and ready. The castle was quiet, its stone walls filled with the soft ticking of the night. Yet Roderick's thoughts were not on rest or celebration. He could not forget the silver-eyed girl and her wolf. Lyra had saved Prince Alaric, but she had vanished into the forest once more. Something in Roderick stirred, a mixture of concern, awe, and something he could not yet name. He knew the forest still held her, bound by forces that were older and darker than any he had faced. The next morning he rode toward the Darkwood forest. The villagers whispered as he passed. Some feared the forest, some revered it, and some spoke of Lyra in hushed tones, calling her the Wolf Guardian. Roderick felt a mixture of skepticism and respect. He had seen her power, had seen the forest obey her, and yet he did not understand the full extent of it. He reached the forest's edge as dawn painted the sky in pale gold. Mist curled along the twisted roots, and the air carried the scent of damp earth and something ancient. Kale appeared almost silently from the shadows, his silver eyes locking onto Roderick. Lyra stepped from behind a tree, her presence calm yet commanding, her hair catching the morning light like threads of night. "You came back," she said quietly, her eyes scanning him carefully. Roderick nodded. "I cannot leave you here alone. The forest, it is part of you, isn't it? I must understand it, and I must help you if it demands more." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. "The forest tests those who enter it. It watches for fear, doubt, and weakness. And now it tests me again." She gestured to the dense trees behind her. "There is a place in the heart of the forest where the shadows gather. It is there that I must confront what binds me. If I fail, the curse could consume me forever, and the prince could be trapped again, lost between worlds." Roderick's chest tightened. "Then we go together. You are not alone." Lyra studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. But you must follow my instructions exactly. One misstep and the forest will turn against you." Together, they moved deeper into the forest. Every step felt heavier than the last, as though the trees themselves were weighing their resolve. Shadows danced along the ground, stretching and twisting with the movement of the sun, and faint whispers rode the wind, murmuring words no human could fully understand. Kale led the way, nose to the ground, alert to every shift in the air. The closer they came to the forest's heart, the more the shadows seemed alive. Figures appeared and disappeared at the edge of vision, faces of the lost, shapes of long-dead creatures, illusions crafted by the forest itself. Roderick's hand never left the hilt of his sword, though he knew it could not harm these things. He had seen Lyra's power. He had seen Kale's strength. Steel would do nothing here. Survival depended on courage, trust, and the ability to face fear without flinching. Finally, they reached a clearing where the light of the sun barely touched the ground. At the center of the clearing was a black pool, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting not the forest around it but swirling shadows and flickering visions. From the edge of the pool, a low hum emanated, vibrating through the air, and Roderick felt it deep in his chest, like the forest itself was alive and aware of their presence. Lyra approached the pool carefully, her hands raised slightly. "This is the heart of the forest. It shows the truth of what binds us. Kale and I, we are part of it, and here I must face what I fear most. Only then can the curse be undone." Roderick stepped forward. "What do you fear?" Lyra's eyes did not leave the pool. "Alone, forgotten, powerless. The curse is not only about the forest claiming me. It is about the forest taking everything I love if I fail. If I falter, Kale, the prince, and perhaps even you could be lost to it forever." Roderick's chest tightened. I will not let that happen. Whatever it asks of you, whatever tests it gives, we will face them together. Lyra finally looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, fear, hope, and a quiet longing. Then stay close. Do not let the shadows frighten you. And do not speak unless I ask. The pool's surface began to ripple. From its dark depths, shapes rose, phantoms of Lyra's past, faces of people she had loved and lost, shadows of enemies and those she had failed. The forest projected memories, doubts, and fears, twisting them into forms that seemed to step out of the pool and into reality. Roderick felt the hairs on his neck stand on end. He had never seen illusions so real. One figure, a woman with sorrowful eyes, stepped toward Lyra. You abandoned us, it whispered. You failed them, you cannot escape the curse. Lyra's hands trembled slightly, but she stood tall. I did what I had to survive, she said firmly. I do not deny my past, but it does not control me anymore. The phantom reached toward her, but Kale leaped forward, growling, forcing it back. Shadows swirled around them, and the air became thick with tension. The forest tested her, pushing her to confront every regret, every fear, every lingering doubt. Roderick felt a strange pull, as if the forest was probing his mind as well. He saw visions of his own doubts, failures he had endured, mistakes that haunted him. Yet he held fast. He could not falter, not now. His focus was Lyra and the courage they shared. Suddenly, a black figure rose from the center of the pool, taller and darker than any shadow before. Its eyes glowed like burning coals, and its voice resonated through the clearing. You seek to undo what binds you, girl. You seek freedom for what is mine. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. I seek only to protect those I love. I am not yours to control. The shadow surged, lashing tendrils of darkness at her. Kale barked and leapt, deflecting some of the attack. Roderick raised his sword instinctively, though he knew it would do little against such magic. You must face it alone, Lyra said quickly, placing her hands on his arm. Your presence is strength, but this trial is mine. Only I can confront this part of the curse. Roderick hesitated, but then nodded. He could see the determination in her eyes. She was both fragile and powerful, human and something more. I will not leave you, he said quietly. I will be here, always ready to help. Lyra gave a faint nod, then turned to face the shadow. Her hands glowed with a pale silver light, matching the glow in her eyes. She stepped forward, and the shadow recoiled slightly, as if recognizing the power within her. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The pool's surface churned, and the phantoms of her past advanced. Lyra spoke words that were ancient, the language of the forest itself. Light flowed from her hands, intertwining with the darkness of the shadow. Kale circled the clearing, growling, ready to protect her. Roderick watched, heart pounding, as the struggle unfolded. The shadow writhed, striking at her with bursts of darkness, but Lyra's silver light pushed back, stronger with each step. Slowly, the shadow began to shrink, folding in on itself like smoke caught in a gust of wind. Lyra's voice rang out, clear and strong. You do not control me, I am my own master. With a final surge of light, the shadow dissipated entirely. The pool's surface stilled, reflecting only the clearing and the first rays of sunlight breaking through the canopy. Lyra fell to her knees, exhausted but victorious. Kale padded to her side, nuzzling her shoulder. Roderick rushed forward, helping her to stand. You did it, he said, awe in his voice. The curse, it's gone. Lyra shook her head slowly. Not entirely. I am free of the shadow, but the forest still watches. It will always be part of me, and I part of it. But the prince is safe now, and I have faced the darkness that controlled me for so long. Roderick studied her, realizing the depth of her courage. She had faced fears he could barely imagine, fought shadows born from her own past, and emerged stronger. And through it all, she had remained human, compassionate, and unyielding. The prince's voice echoed faintly from the path behind them. He had followed Kale's guidance and arrived safely, watching the scene with wide eyes. Roderick looked at him and felt a surge of relief. Alaric was unharmed, and the bond between the girl, the wolf, and the forest had proven stronger than fear itself. Lyra finally smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "The journey is not over," she said. "The forest still holds secrets, but we have faced the hardest part." Roderick nodded, feeling a deep respect for the girl and her wolf. "Then we continue together," he said firmly. "Whatever the forest asks next, we face it side by side." Kale let out a low, approving growl, and the mist around them began to thin. The forest seemed to relax, as if acknowledging their courage and trust. But even as they began to move back toward the castle, Roderick knew the forest's trials were far from finished. And Lyra remained a mystery, a force of nature bound by magic, courage, and secrets yet untold. The shadows may have been defeated for now, but the heart of the forest still waited, alive and patient, watching the girl, the wolf, and the officer who had dared to trust her. The first light of dawn stretched across Eldoria, painting the kingdom in soft gold and silver. The streets, once tense with fear, were now filled with cautious hope. Word had spread that Prince Alaric was safe, though few knew how the rescue had been accomplished. Most believed it was luck or chance, but Roderick and Lyra understood the truth. Magic, courage, and trust had carried the day. Yet their journey was far from over. Lyra remained bound to the Darkwood Forest, a place alive with whispers and shadows, and the final threads of her curse had yet to be untangled. Roderick had insisted on returning with her. If the forest demanded more, he would not leave her alone. Kale emerged from the forest's edge, his massive silver eyes reflecting the morning light. Lyra was beside him, her hair damp with dew, her expression solemn yet determined. She turned to Roderick, the weight of unspoken thoughts in her gaze. "We must go deeper," she said. "The heart of the forest is still alive. There is one final trial, one that will decide not only my fate but the balance of magic here." Roderick adjusted his armor, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "I will be by your side," he said firmly. "Whatever the forest asks, we face it together." Lyra gave a faint nod, her silver eyes softening for a brief moment. Then, without another word, they stepped into the shadows of the forest. The deeper they went, the thicker the mist became. Sunlight barely touched the ground, and the air was heavy with the scent of wet earth and moss. Strange shapes flickered at the edges of their vision. Branches twisted into faces, shadows stretched and shifted, and the faint glow of magical energy pulsed like a heartbeat. Roderick's senses were on high alert. Though he had fought men and beasts, nothing compared to the alive, breathing forest around him. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind seemed like a message or a threat. Yet through it all, Kale moved confidently, guiding them forward, and Lyra walked with a steady grace that belied her exhaustion. Finally, they reached a clearing larger than any before, its center dominated by a massive stone altar. The surface of the altar was etched with glowing runes that pulsed faintly. The air hummed with energy and shadows shifted as if alive. "This is the heart," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The final challenge. Whatever waits here, it will not yield easily." Roderick felt a chill run down his spine. The forest's power was undeniable here, ancient and aware. Yet he knew Lyra was stronger than any shadow. She had faced her past, the curse, and had emerged victorious. This final trial would demand not only strength but trust in herself, Kale, and him. The runes flared suddenly, and a figure rose from the altar. It was a shadow, larger and darker than any they had encountered, with glowing red eyes and tendrils of darkness that writhed like living snakes. It spoke, not in words but in a wave of thought and feeling. "You seek freedom. You seek to undo what binds you. Why should I let you pass?" Lyra stepped forward, silver light beginning to glow faintly around her hands. "Because I choose courage over fear," she said firmly. "Because I protect what I love, because I am not yours to control." The shadow lunged, its tendrils flailing. Cale leapt forward, growling, but this time Roderick did not hesitate. Though his sword could not harm the shadow, he raised it to defend Lyra, to show solidarity. His presence, his courage, became a beacon, proof that she was not alone. Lyra's light met the darkness, and the clearing seemed to tremble. Memories of her past, the loneliness, the fear, the regrets, surfaced, projected into the shadows. Phantoms of her family, long lost, appeared. Faces she had loved, faces she had failed, all demanded acknowledgement. "You cannot escape what you have lost," the forest seemed to roar. Lyra's voice rang out, clear and steady. "I do not escape it, I face it. I carry it with me, but it does not control me." Her hands glowed brighter, and Cale circled the shadow, keeping it contained. Roderick felt the warmth of her power, strong and pure, a force of courage and love. The shadow shrieked, writhing violently, but Lyra stood firm. Slowly, the darkness began to fold in on itself, dissolving into wisps of smoke. The runes on the altar flared, then faded to a soft silver light. The air stilled, calm and serene, as if the forest itself was exhaling after a long trial. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. Cale padded to her side, nuzzling her gently. Roderick knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "The curse, it's gone." Lyra shook her head slowly. "Not entirely. I will always be part of the forest and it part of me. But the shadows that bound me, that threatened the prince and all I care for, those are gone. I am free to live as I choose." Roderick studied her, awe and admiration mixing with something deeper, something tender and unspoken. She had faced darkness beyond human comprehension, and yet she remained compassionate, strong, and unyielding. He realized in that moment that his trust in her had grown into something profound, something he could not ignore. The prince's voice rang from the edge of the clearing. "Lyra, Captain Roderick." Alaric ran toward them, eyes wide with relief. He hugged Lyra first, then turned to Roderick. "Thank you for coming for me," he said earnestly. Roderick smiled, placing a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "The honor was mine, Your Highness." "But Lyra, she saved you, truly." Lyra stood, brushing dew from her cloak. Her silver eyes softened as she looked at Roderick. "The forest is at peace for now," she said, "and it allowed us to succeed because of trust, courage, and bonds between those who face it together." Roderick's heart swelled. "Then we face everything together," he said firmly. "Whatever comes next, you will not be alone." Cale let out a low, approving growl. Lyra reached down to stroke his head, then glanced at Roderick again. There was a moment of understanding between them, words unnecessary. They had faced shadows, magic, fear, and courage together. A bond had been formed, stronger than any spell or shadow. The journey back to the castle was quiet, filled with a new sense of calm. The forest had tested them, yet it no longer loomed as a threat. It seemed almost alive in a protective way, guiding them toward the edge. As they emerged into the sunlight, Roderick realized how much had changed. Not only had they rescued the prince, but they had all grown stronger, braver, and more aware of the unseen forces that shaped their world. When the castle gates opened and the guards rushed to receive them, the king and queen's relief was palpable. The prince ran to his parents, tears of joy and gratitude streaming down his face. The royal court whispered in awe at the story that would soon unfold, though few would know the full truth. Roderick looked at Lyra, her hair damp, her eyes shimmering with the residue of magic and exhaustion. "The kingdom owes you more than I can say," he said quietly. She smiled faintly. "I do not need thanks. I only ask that you remember, courage and trust can change even the darkest fate." Later, as the sun rose higher, Lyra and Roderick stood at the edge of the forest, looking out over the kingdom. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of flowers and the promise of life beyond shadows. Cale padded beside them, silent but vigilant. Roderick turned to Lyra, a soft intensity in his gaze. "I cannot forget what we faced together," he said. Nor can I ignore what I feel for you. The bond between us, it is more than friendship. Lyra's silver eyes softened and she reached out, lightly touching his hand. I feel it too, she admitted. This bond, it grew in shadows and courage, in trust and sacrifice. It is real, Roderick, and it will endure even as we return to the world beyond the forest. The wolf let out a gentle howl and Lyra laughed softly, a sound like wind through leaves. Cale approves, she said. Roderick chuckled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. The forest, the shadows, the curse. They had all tested them, but in the end they had emerged stronger, braver, and bound together by something deeper than any challenge the world could offer. As they walked back toward the castle, the mist of the forest lingered behind them, a silent witness to courage, trust, and the triumph of light over shadow. The kingdom had been saved, but more importantly, hearts had been transformed, and a bond forged in darkness would shine in the light of a new dawn. The forest waited quietly, patient and alive, but for now it had granted them peace. Lyra, Roderick, and Cale had proven themselves worthy, not by sword or power alone, but by courage, love, and unwavering trust. And though the forest would always remain a place of secrets, it would also remain a symbol of redemption and hope. And somewhere in the wind, carrying the echoes of leaves and whispered magic, it seemed to murmur, "This is not the end, only a new beginning."